Well, all right, here we go. This is Wild West Filmmaking. We have a special guest who is actually our first guest, Michael Paraskevas. How are you?
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Still
Yeah,
waking
we're,
up.
yeah. It's a we're. That's the thing about. It's the beauty of this, and it's also the curse. If you're on the early receiving time, sometimes it can be a little sketch, or opposite. If you do it in the evening, you're all like jazzed up, and the people are ready to crash out.
I'm an early
Yeah,
riser, so
are you really?
yeah, yeah. I learned that was my one of the big things I learned during COVID is just like get up early and just get it done because it's just
Wow. So
I
you
can't
wait,
work
you
or try not
you
to.
so you learned you found this out during COVID?
Yeah, I think maybe like a little before COVID, but then once I was like obviously home all the time and stuck at my desk. I would like get up really early, go on a walk, and I find I like to work before like all the emails and Slack messages start coming in and just have at least a couple hours early in the day to just be with myself, creatively and just find so much more peace in that way. And then if I start the day well, then it's like you can just kind of ride that wave.
Yeah.
I like I used to like, procrastinate and like wait and then like start working late at night, but then you'd be up, doing all-nighters and stuff. And I was just like, this is not sustainable. So,
Yeah, that's it's wild because we're all different. I was going to ask you that of like your method, and we can get into that. So, some people believe or think, or I mean, it could be true. It could be everything's it's different for individuals. It's different for me, especially as I've grown older. But like, I think it was Bob Dylan who said there was on his first album there was like two or three songs that asked like, I mean, was this a long process of this song? He said no. One night he opened up the windows over in Greenwich Village, and he said the song flew into the window because everyone else was sleeping, and he said he just wrote it. It came to him. Um,
yeah.
I think that has a lot to do with youth, probably at that time, substances. There's freedom. That's something that people don't really, that I struggle with, that no one really talked about, which was the creative process being easier when I was, you know, when I was 19, 20, 21, and 22. I didn't have any responsibilities, as
Yeah.
in just trying to not die, basically,
Yeah.
and navigate life. And I think out of that, you're this super open vessel, right? And you're not worried about 401ks, you're not worrying about children, just different things, or, a 9 to 5 or promotions, or there's just things that we just, add on to our, I mean, even like a Netflix bill, right? You just keep adding these little things that I think feel like weigh you down. And it's just growing up. It's life. It's not, you can't escape those things. But there is a freedom sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
And I think if you can carve, that's why you have to carve out the time. It was Quentin Tarantino who said he used to write, him and Paul Thomas Anderson, they're known for partying and staying up super late and going on benders and then writing, right? Subconsciously writing. Well, obviously, PTA is totally different now. And Quentin says that he wakes up early in the morning. He writes from 8 to 11. He has lunch, tea. He gets in the pool and hangs out in the pool, hangs out with his family. And then they have dinner and he watches movies. And the next day he wakes up a little bit earlier and reads it. And so it's
Yeah.
a routine of, and he says he writes, I feel like his stuff's enhanced in a way. I mean, there's nothing, you can't compare anything to Boogie Nights, but like it's enhanced. I mean, have you ever felt like for you, was there ever times when it was easier for you to write at in the midnight hours, keeping the window open?
Yeah. I mean, I think like you said, like when I was younger and like, I was like
Mm.
in college, like, and stuff like that, where it's you have a whole like you go to the football game, then you go straight to go straight to the computer lab and keep working till 3 a.m. And I think, there's definitely a certain like energy and endurance that you need for that. And I know some people too, like that I know out here, like who are older than me, like they still, like those midnight hours. And I think it's sort of different for everyone and you kind of have to find what works for you. And I read like this really good book called Rest, and it
Mm.
talks sort of examines all these famous like thinkers, scientists, artists, creatives, like people, politicians, like throughout history, on in all these different cultures, and it's sort of it looks at like what their schedules are like, their routines, and a lot of them are like Tarantino's, where like they only work deep focus for a couple hours a day, and then they go off and do other things, and like you're still like you're filling your soul, you're still your brain is still working like when you sleep, like, and so there's all these different, I guess, like strategies or things that you can do to sort of optimize that. And I always thought that was really fascinating because it's sort of the opposite of what we're taught in this country and sort of the work culture that's ingrained in here. And um but it's nice, I guess, at being as an artist, as an independent artist, we have a little more freedom in that regard to sort of discover what works for us. And I feel like I've the past few years just really trying to like hone in on that process and to work more efficiently, or to um, work in a way where you don't dread it. And I know that's when you're working on a project like that, like a with any sort of deadline, like it always there's all these other external pressures, and so it's how do you keep yourself, how do you keep momentum going, how do you keep the joy, and preserve all of that.
Yeah, it's like the long game, right? It's like trying to figure out how to still be creative. I mean, I'm always inspired. Like, I read Flea's new book or his autobiography, and just his life of like that. I mean, destructive lifestyle that they had, but they were the Chili Peppers, and it sort of worked. It was like this. I can't imagine being around them when in their prime, when they were just whacked out and crazy, and that energy. But he still has it. He still has that twinkle in his eye. But he takes care of himself. He does lots of yoga and plays basketball and doesn't party. And he's. I mean, money helps, though you can have a lifestyle like that. I think that's sort
Yeah.
of, if you don't make it big early on and you don't get that big paycheck, you really have to like stop for a second and be like, okay, what's the long game here? And how do I still stay sharp, creative, loose, right? And but still take care of myself. And it's almost like I went through a really, after I did, because This World Won't Break was, I mean, that dang near killed me, because I was like living, I was doing everything. I was still like, it was called Whiskey Beard Films, and I owned up to that, like late night lifestyle of like shooting and going to shows. And I remember thinking like, oh, I didn't want to make another movie because of how I physically felt and
Yeah.
mentally felt. I was fried, and I was like, oh, I don't want to make another movie. And I realized, no, I just don't want to make another movie like that. You
Yeah.
know, it's so hard. It's like on El Tonto Por Cristo, it's like I've never been more like taking care of myself. I didn't have one drop of anything during the pre-production, and then like the production of the film and part of post-production. And I can't imagine even having like a glass of wine, because I was sleeping like 2 hours a day, but I
Oh.
would wake up and I was just on fire. And I became like, I have a very addictive personality when it comes to anything in life. And I became like so addicted to having that clear, sharp mind, and it served me so well, and it does serve well. And I realized, oh, there's more power in this, in rest, and taking care of yourself. And it's not about any type of substance or any type of like sleep deprivation, or there's no medal of honor for that. And
Yeah.
I had to let it go, and it felt like I felt exposed, I felt insecure a little bit. But I think just like working with everybody else was on the same page as well. And and you were dialed in. We all had to be dialed in on El Tonto Per Cristo. And we're talking today because today is the day that the first single is released. It's out into the world. We've um it feels like, and I want to get into this of how you feel in the process. We're talking about you know, being able to carry on and plow through. Like, this is something that we had talked about, 3 years ago. The movie was shot literally 2 years ago this month. And then we go into the quickest part shooting. We shot for 14 days, and it's taken us 2 years for this single to come out because of the release of the film. How do you, as a as a composer, as a creative, you're able to plan, you're able to um, write, conduct, do all these things, and then you have other projects in the meantime. How do you keep that flame going from idea to today? And the album's not out today. It's, you know, the whole entire album comes out October 6th, and it's the world premiere of El Tonto Por Cristo. And it's wild because I heard this thing when you posted everything this morning, and I was looking at stuff, and it just gave me chills. And it's that picture that I'm so proud of, that shot that Hutch Crane did at the very end of the film. And I was like, oh, I wish we could hold on that shot longer, but the film doesn't need it. But
Yeah,
now we have it forever.
yeah,
And so, yes, I just, if you don't mind, like, this is Wild West filmmaking. I want people to, you know, we peel the curtain back a little bit of, you were coming off of and still in Agatha All Along and some other projects. How do you balance that? How do you keep the fire going? And are you still excited today as you were when you first saw a rough cut?
yeah. Oh, definitely. Um, I think for me, keeping the fire going is honestly, it comes relatively easy. And I think, especially, just the way, projects sort of are sequenced, where I think for me, a big thing that I, try to focus on is like working on things that are different than what I've worked on before. And I love like, doing so many different genres and styles and, um, different types of story making. And I think that's what's really special about this, industry and this, this world that we live in, is there's so many ways to express being human and so many ways to share stories. And so I think it was interesting going, from this very intense like studio environment, and we have these Zoom calls with a bunch of people on them, and there's all these different layers of things that you're trying to coordinate, that you can make it really challenging, and the timeline was really crazy. And then basically had like a month to like take a break, and then but even then I was like already kind of overlapping and diving in with El Tonto. um and it's such a different shift, where if even though we're not even in the same time zone, that the it feels more intimate, and it's sort of, you try to find that sense of collaboration even on the bigger projects. But I think searching for that intimacy, and so that creative synergy. And I think since we've worked before, and since we've been talking about El Tonto for even longer, I think that it was such an easy transition to sort of get into that. And I think it was kind of nice because we coming off this momentum from Agatha, and just like as soon as I started writing, it was just like it was just coming out. And it wasn't, sometimes when you start a project, you sort of get stuck in the beginning, and you're sort of unsure of where to go or what you're looking for. And I think, for us, we've like had this dialogue. We had, you'd shown me, scenes here and there, seen parts of the script, and like, so it's even like if I'm not actively writing music, it's just been sitting in the back of my mind. And we've been listening to like Orthodox chant and like other musical references. And so I think, yeah, it was kind of nice. Like once we got going on it, then it felt very natural. And I think it's all about allowing ourselves, our creativity, um our bodies, just to like open up to that, the window, like Bob Dylan, and just let that flow through. But you can't just like expect it to happen. You have to sort of prepare for that. And I think but once it does, then that's what makes it so invigorating. And um I think whenever a project like reveals itself to you, I think there's something like really special in that.
Yeah, maybe you can walk us through. I know it's probably different every time that you compose something or write something, but what is, once again, this is Wild West filmmaking. There's probably some composers or people who they want to make music to film. What is the process for you? Like, obviously there's some go by stuff. Do you want a lot of go by? Do you not want a lot of go by? When you sit down, because in El Tonto, for example, I mean, we have Cimatron. If a lot of people don't know what a Cimatron is, it's a large piece of wood that monks would hammer and bang on to replicate this.
Oh,
The
and
there we
it's
go. Yeah, and if you're watching this, there you go.
Oh.
That's the that's amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, um, so you're incorporating that. You're incorporating banjo, slide guitar, actual hymns from the Orthodox Church that you play on. So when you're okay, if there's no music, there's nothing. What do you do? Are you the kind of person who does guitar, piano? I would just like to know your process of how is it different each scene, or is it always kind of a because they're all blank and you got to put something there. How does that? Because it's mesmerizing to me.
Yeah, I'd say the process kind of for each story, kind of you have to sort of figure out where to start. And, for something like this, where we talked about there's certain colors and certain instruments and sounds that, really build up this world. And so for me, it was like, I'm gonna go and just like we're gonna record like those instruments and you know have a guitarist just like record different like textures and sounds and that gets some of the music gets a little into like these sort of gothic horror elements
Mm.
and so that's something like you can't really like mock up on a computer. You have to actually go and record that. um and so we just, create these like, giant, I always think of it as like you're like dump the Lego bin out on the
Mhm.
floor and you just have all the pieces there. But you can see them and then you sort of just start combining them and picking ones and put them together. And I think that's like such a fun part at the beginning is like you're just building your toolkit. Um, and then like with the Symmetron, like that was one where I was like, I don't like this would be a really cool idea, but I'm like, I don't know how we're gonna do this. Like, I don't know where to find one. And I was like looking online and it's hard to like really find much info and like sort of like going to a monastery in Greece or something. I'm like, I don't know what to do. But then I stumbled across there's this artist in of all places at the Nasher Museum in is it Dallas or Fort Worth? It
Dallas,
was
yeah, Nasher's in
yeah.
downtown Dallas, yeah.
Yeah, saw this like there was literally the year I probably while you were filming like this artist Robert Barsamian had built like a big Symmetron for this exhibit that he did there and I found he worked with this musician Kayla Liptak who was at UNT at the time and she performed as part of this exhibit and so I reached out to her and I was like, hey, do you still have access to it? And sure enough, she did. And so, even though I was still here, um, we were able to connect and then she was able to go and record just a bunch of, little snippets. And
I didn't
then
know
we were
that.
able to,
I never knew that. Oh my gosh.
but
So the
it-
Symmetron that you hear in the movie and in the soundtrack and score, I thought it was somebody you knew out in Los Angeles
oh
from
no.
like a church there, like an Orthodox Greek church. So you found out about it at the Nasher Museum, and the girl was a student at UNT,
Yeah.
and then you reached out. She records it, and that's what we're hearing on the
Yeah.
score. Oh
It
my
was it's
goodness.
meant to be. And, and I
Yeah,
just
this film
laughed
is like
like,
yeah.
yeah, of all places. Like,
I feel like this entire film really is I mean, down to the random goat that's in my movie. There was a guy who was mute and deaf, and he had a goat farm, and I got to pick out a goat because the white albino armadillo that I had cast in a scene had passed away, and we were scrambling. There wasn't cell phone service, and I saw this guy. So it's just like that's the beauty of being open, being ready, prepared, and you have to strike. And that's what luck really is. People talk about luck, and it was always growing up, luck meant like somebody that was lazy that scratched off a ticket. But really, luck is like doing your work, being prepared. And when that little opening opens up in the sky, the lightning bolt can strike through it. And it's chance, it's timing. Is there anything else? This is great. I want to just talk more about this. Is there any other crazy, or is everybody local that you used? and how do you know that's the right person, or is it just like sometimes it's just the only person, you know?
Yeah. It was actually pretty spread out, and honestly, I come to think of it, I think a lot of the musicians like we recorded remotely or away from LA, and I think but it's people I've built relationships with, and so like the guitarist, or one of the guitarists, Joe Ayub, who did like the acoustic stuff, like he used to be out here, and I was in New York, plays on the Kelly Clarkson show, um and like a longtime collaborator. And so it's very easy for me to hit him up and like, hey, like we're looking for these sort of things. Like, can you like send that over? And we kind of like hopped on a Zoom call and sort of like talked through it as he's recording. And so that was fun. Um, and then, I think it's kind of similar, I think, with a lot of people where so it's sort of like kind of give sort of ideas of what we're looking for, and sort of like but like do your thing. And I'm always interested in hearing like what musicians like that they know their instrument better than like anyone, and like what are cool ideas or textures that they have in their arsenal, and sort of this back and forth. um and then like I did have a violinist, Lauren Elizabeth Baba. She came over, and like for her stuff, like a lot of it was more like written out, and so it's that it's very specific, sort of what we're
But you
trying
had
to do.
written out for her like
Yeah, uh,
sheet music, okay.
yeah. So that's kind of, so we record that more towards the end of the process, because
Hmm.
it's like it's easier to like, like mock up like fake violin,
Hmm.
at least for sort of this some of the stuff that we're doing. But knowing that like, she's gonna, and she was on tour with Japanese Breakfast at the time, and it was like
Oh
I was like,
wow.
I hope you're in town like when we need to record, and thankfully she was, because she's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's so wild because, like, I mean, you would send like that. You would send some stuff that I think you had played on the keyboard that was violin, and we're finding the tempo and the sound and the mood, and it's so wild because sometimes that does work, right? Like, listening to some computer music and like some Spike Jones films or whatever. It's like you can only imagine if it had an actual score, it wouldn't. It's it's knowing when to have real instruments and when to not. And on this, whenever she plays on there, it's just, even though it's the same tone, it's the same note, it's just, it feels more raw and alive because the film is very much chest open, right? It's a very raw look inside of, because they're in this monastery, they're in their cassocks, they're in their cells, so they're kind of like closing themselves off, but yet they're so vulnerable. And I think that when you hear these real instruments, like even like the Semitron, just the one pop, it gives you so much emotion. Um, Whenever you do that, do you know when it can be electronic and when it can be real? I mean, is that like an instinct right off the bat? And sometimes it's just, it's funding, it's having the right,
Yeah.
being able to pay people. And so, are there a lot of times where it's like it's because of money that it just needs to be that way, and you can't do a real person, or is it because of the tone, or is it
I think
how do you?
99% of it, it's usually the budget will help sort of to dictate what you do. But
Right.
even on like smaller budgets and like short films and stuff, if the story needs like a live musician, then I will do anything and everything I can to make that happen. Because I think it's, again, there's just like a certain magic that other artists bring, and I think that's what's so special about filmmaking, is it's just this like huge collaboration between all these geniuses in their different fields that come together and somehow like make a story. And so I think that's something that I personally like just try to pursue as much as possible. And even if it's like I there's no budget, but like can I buy you lunch, or like I know like on the next one where there's a bigger budget, like you'll get paid like real good. And
For sure.
um or like is there stuff I can record myself and like um play some instruments. And so I think there's each project sort of kind of guides you like what that is, because also like if it's a 4-minute short film, like are you gonna is the story really going to need like a big orchestra? Like that's not,
Mm,
you kind of have to find like, chances are it's probably going to need something smaller and more intimate, and maybe that is more practical in a recording sense anyway. And so I think it's, yeah, it just really depends. And I think, technology is so crazy now where you can make things sound pretty real, but you can still tell when an actual human is performing it because it's just there's a soul to it that doesn't
mm.
exist with the programming. And but then like there are certain cases where sometimes it is easier just to keep the samples, and but I think it really varies sort of the type of thing we're doing. Like pianos, I don't think we have any piano in this, but like piano samples generally sound pretty good. So if it's like actually on This World Won't Break, there were a couple cues where like we just kept the samples as it was, and like there's not a reason to go book a studio and like do all
Mm,
this for 2 minutes of piano that's just
mm.
like melody or something. And so it just depends on the case, but as much as I can, like, yeah, try to work with real musicians.
Yeah, and speaking of like having a soul and being connected with something that's live, on this one we got a chance to work with the Polyphonic Spree Choir, who have all been around. They've been in the band since it first started, and 20, how many years? They started in 2001, like 25, 26
Uh,
years. Um, and there was something that was so important about having that sound. I think maybe just because I've just always known it. It's been something so familiar to me, but it encapsulates like encapsulates. Is that a right word? I don't know.
feel
It.
is it-
I've got, yeah. Maybe it's too early for me in Dallas, but it summed up what I wanted the film to feel like, which is angelic, um, heavenly, and also there's those moments with Rosemary like childlike, right? I feel like
Mhm.
whenever they sing it, it referenced Rosemary and the end of the film with Rosemary. And so what was that like? And I was kind of in and out on that whole process. You and Andrew, who's you've worked with, and you guys are phenomenal together. You guys came to Dallas, and we set up a recording studio with John Pedigo. And yeah, just you want to walk us through that process and how that works when people hear the film.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you. Yeah, shout out to Andrew and Makai. Really helped, on my team just keep everything, going and
Yeah, for
coordinating all
sure.
that. 'Cause it is a lot. And I think also, with Jessica and as sort of like the spearheading it as well. And I think it was another instance of like, everyone, all the choir members are all sort of scattered about, and we had
Hmm.
to sort of pinpoint the like this one chance to we're all together in the same room. And I
Haley's
think it,
Haley's Comet. Yeah.
yeah, but we found it and it worked. And I think it was so much fun. Like, also just being from Dallas, go back home, and my parents were able to come for the recording
Hmm.
session as well. Um, and yeah, I think it's just like a really, special, energetic, thing. And we talked a lot about, how their voices like sound like waves, these ocean waves. Now it's like a
Mm.
recurring motif throughout the film, and that there's something, like you said, angelic and spiritual and sort of ethereal to it. And it's really cool because it had five singers, but all sort of sound like one embodied voice. And I think that, that's just, I think also, I guess personally as well, like I listened to Polyphonic Spree like when I was younger, and like they came and performed at my high school at one point. And here we are, and years later, like never knew like our paths would cross again in the same way. Um, and I just think there's all these like little cosmic things that are like, oh yeah, I guess that's this is how it's meant to be. And I think um it was, yeah, just really special, just working with them, and really added just so much, magic to the score and to these moments, and I think really helps uplift it. Um and I think it was just such a like such an important part of the story. And I think, it's something that we had talked about like very early on of like we're gonna find a way to work this in, and like we kind of became like this, this other character and representing,
Mm.
these, without revealing anything about the story, but just representing like certain moments and certain parts of the story that I think just really really sublime. And so
Yeah, it's and it's so important to me because as a storyteller, filmmaker, you a lot of filmmakers you can get caught up in the trap of a lot of this has to do with from the top, right? Production. They're going to give you money. They want it to look like Fast and the Furious, or they want it to feel like this. They want it to feel like so you're already kind of have been painted in a corner. And so the great thing about independent film and having someone professional and talented like you on an independent film is, from the beginning, I was like, there's never been a film made about orthodoxy in America that's a narrative feature that's just imagination and mystery and wonder. There's been documentaries and stuff. And also, there hasn't been anything in Texas. And the monastery here in Kemp, Texas, which is like an hour from Dallas, has two nuns in it right now. A lot of people think of monasteries like Mount Athos, and there's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of monks all over. And, this was my world. It's driving all the way out there, and it's just nature. There's cows and stuff from the next door neighbor. And then the music was, banjo music. A lot of my friends are in bands and they play the banjo, and that's the sound you hear around here. And then I've been involved with the Playfunk Spree for so long. And so I really hope and I do believe that people are going to walk away watching and hearing something that they've never experienced before, because how could you have? It's our experience. And just the fact that we have the Playfunk Spree Choir, Matthew Posey improvising a banjo song, and then all the talented musicians you have and brought in, and you and your dad writing an original piece. There's just so much. Um, we could probably do 2 hours of just talking about just the soundtrack. And what was that like for you? Was that always an idea to have your dad and you write something original? Is it one of those lightning bolt things that was just it happened because of what the film needed in that certain point?
yeah, no, that was very much a lightning bolt thing.
Mm,
And it was interesting because it actually came from, I had gone back to Dallas in the middle of working on this for a weekend where my dad was, a longtime choir director at St. Seraphim's and was retiring, and so he was sort of being honored.
mhm.
And I was, singing in the choir, just and then standing there, just thinking about, wow, like this is so different. Like I can't believe for my entire life, like he's been this constant, and I know how important, that ministry is to him, and how important, the work that he's put in over the years. And it's, at the time when he first started directing, like this is before the internet. This is before there's a lot of resources in English. A lot of, Orthodox texts were, in Russian or Greek. And um like between him and Archbishop Dmitri, like really were able, to build out this repertoire, and the amount of work that he like put in sort of, translating things, and um sort of, yeah, opening up this musical world that now, like now you look online, you can find so many things, but it's crazy to think like none of that was really that accessible before. And just so, yeah, just I think I was just thinking about just like all the, the work that he's put into this. And um you know I know he's like a brilliant, musician and composer and arranger, but I feel like some of that is like sort of untapped.
Mm,
And um and so I was just standing there. I was like, we have this. Josh and I have been talking about this hymn that sort of occurs in a few spots, and we know it's to the words "Señor ten piedad," which "Lord have mercy" in Spanish. And so I was just kind of like, just standing there, and I was like, what if my dad and I like co-write this together? And he was, floored when I asked him, and I think it was just something of like, I know there's this thing that he can do that maybe he hasn't really like leaned into before. And I just thought, especially, just the nature of the film itself and how it really is a village, and it really is, the community rallying together to make the film, and like your family is involved. Both my parents make cameos in the film.
Yeah, I was gonna say
All
that.
these people that we're all really close to, that really, like, put in, whatever they could to make this come to life. And I think this was just like another moment where I was like, oh yeah, like this seems like it's right. And so yeah, and I think it's really, I think it makes it even more special, at least personally for me. So
Yeah, and then talking about the release of the single today, and then the LP comes out, the double vinyl record is being pressed as we speak. I got to do test pressing listenings. I did all the art with every talented person that I could find, and I'm so proud of this double LP vinyl record. And when you open it up, it's going to have an original poster that's created by a talented guy who's also talented in the choir. It's Patrick Reeves. He painted a new 11 by 17 poster that's inside, and then we have the sheet music of you and your dad. That song is in there, so it's like it's official. That's I can't wait to hear that in a service in an Orthodox church or cathedral. It's just going to be. It's so wild because they in the film it's the I'm blanking out on the title, but it's the holy, holy, holy that the Orthodox Saint Seraphim choir sings. It's
a
the
mercy piece.
holy, yeah, yes, the mercy piece. And when I heard them, they were just warming up. They weren't planning on recording that when we had John Pedigo that day in the cathedral. And they were like, well, let's just warm up. Let's do, Mercy of Peace. And they're doing it. And me and Pedigo just look at each other like, oh my God. It's just because it's so shocking. It comes at you and it backs off, and it comes at you and it backs off. And I was like, oh man, that's how the movie starts after we've had this silence for so long. And then we have your score of the brother, and then it trickles down, and it's this, you get hit in the face with that. And we were in church the other day, and they sang that again. They sang it at St. Seraphim. And there was probably 6 or 7 people who like turn their heads and they all look at me. I'm like, I didn't write that. That's just because they hadn't seen a screener of the movie. And it's just like that's I think why I love creating and love making things, because our lives are monotonous sometimes and they're busy, and we forget sometimes how talented all your friends all around you. Things become normalized, and there's just those moments. It's like seeing your friends. It's like when I see my wife in the Polyphonics 3 on stage, and I see Tim on stage. It's just like that's what you do. That's what you do. That and I turn around and people are singing along and they're jumping and dancing. It's like, oh wow, what a really cool experience. Because Tim is obviously in this film too. He's been in all my stuff that I've made, and just as an actor. And so it's really cool to see Tim on screen playing a character, and then hearing the Polyphonics choir,
Yeah.
and knowing my wife's in it, and Jennifer Jopes, and everybody who's in it. And then my production designer, Kristen Harden, is actually in the Polyphonics choir. So she's like double dipping there. She gets to sing and then make the sets beautiful. I mean, it's a family affair.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of you. And it's, we did This World Won't Break together, which I'm so proud of that movie, and I'm so proud of the way it sounds. And that's going to come out on double vinyl actually this year as well. And just to I feel like years ago we were just talking about things, and it'd be cool if we did this. And here we are, and the first single drops today of our second feature working together. And I just feel like it's starting to become like that relationship. I was always kind of like inspired or like maybe jealous of like Paul Thomas Anderson and Johnny Greenwood, or there's just
Yeah.
different people, and you're like, I wish because when you make a movie, it's people don't realize this, how lonely it
Oh,
is. I mean, even for you as a composer, it's like, and you're not even on the set. You're the most distant person, like you see everyone's faces, but they've never seen you, so you feel connected to them.
Yeah.
And, and you make something with people for a couple weeks, and then you have to make it into a movie. And I feel like we're getting to the point where our shorthand's getting better, and it's like, well, what if we did this? And it's weird because of how talented you are and your resume and all the things that you do. And I can play G and C on the guitar, and then me being like, well, I think it's not as funny. It needs to be more like dun, 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 or whatever. And I'm like, I sound like an idiot. I feel ridiculous. But you understand, and you have such grace and patience with me. And then, we were listening to Ascension this morning, the new single. I'm like, that's the whole entire movie. You know,
Yeah.
you wrote that piece, and I'm so thankful you did, because the film is in these pieces that are kind of drawn out with through dialogue and maybe just holding a note. And when you hear Ascension and you see that photo, it just feels like that's El Tonto Por Cristo. That if you were to be able to describe what it feels like, because it's a slow paced film that I feel like moves like a train um, after the second act, and we get going on the third act. And I'm so excited for people to use it on their social media as something that is conveying what they're feeling on whatever post that they have. As much as like technology and Spotify and those things are annoying for the artist, but the exposure that you can get and people from all across the world get to experience. And speaking of that, um, people probably don't know because it's in another language, and I post things and it's in Romanian. But in November, the 1st of November, end of October, we're going to Romania, where we're doing the European premiere and the Romanian premiere of El Tonto Por Cristo. And you're going, and you want to talk about what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm super excited for that. Never been before. And yeah, screening the movie, and then we're also doing a concert of some of my music from, El Tonto and from other projects as well. And so we've been, coordinating with that right now and sort of, you know, making arrangements and um changing some of the orchestration to fit, the group that's playing. And then during the concert, I don't even know if you know this, they're gonna have a live sand artist, and they're gonna project her work on a screen, and she's gonna be like drawing in the sand along to the music, sort of like scoring the music that's playing, and it's gonna be really
What?
yeah.
See, this is when everything gets fun. This
Yeah.
is for anyone who's listening and wants to be a filmmaker. In the end, when you get older or you've made projects, you really realize obviously you want your stuff to be recognized and you want people to like it. I mean, that's just human nature. But it's the in between, right? It's getting to go to Romania. And this was never in my wheel. I never thought that they reached out to us, wanted to screen this on. Um, Tarkovsky's son is going to be there, showing a film that he made about his father, of the making of Andre Rube. The timing is bizarre.
I
It's
just watched it.
yeah, and it's
But
it's so crazy. It's about iconography. It's about Andrei Rublev, and it's the making of, and he's going to be there, and they're going to match us up, and we're going to talk film. And I'm showing El Tonto Por Cristo surrounded by this place that has monasteries on every corner and chapels and cathedrals, and then you're playing and conducting your music in front of Romanian people while a lady does sand sculptures. This is You can't make this kind of stuff up. And I really think it's all the stuff that all your hard work, all your determination, all your sacrifices. And I think that, I'm excited to see how all this unfolds in life, how people respond to your music. We had just screened the film in Kentucky to some more artists and investors and people who have been a part of creating. We got some grants from Kentucky, and I showed the film, and it's a 2 hour, and it's 2 hours, and you have credits, so it's almost like 2 hours and 14 minutes. And it's been a long day, And I walked up to the main guy and I said, "Hey, you just go ahead." As the credits were rolling, I said, "You may go up and talk." And he goes, "No." He goes, "Everyone's processing. Also, I want to hear this song." And it was the very end credit song. And everyone just sat there. Then I got up, we did a Q&A. It's supposed to be for 10 minutes, ended up being an hour.
Oh wow.
Because people were processing in real time, and so many comments were on the score of the soundtrack. But it's the kind of film that people will text you and call you the next day or 4 days because they process it. And so the day after, every single person came up and goes, "Man, I've been thinking about the movie. I wish I could see it again today because I think it was a lot to take in." And they were all giving me what they thought the meaning of things were.
Mm.
And one of the guys said that he wishes he wanted more resolve with Ambrose, and he had a whole plot line, a whole story that I could put on the Blu-ray if I needed to about how to resolve some things. And I was like, "Oh, it's so awesome um, that people have a thought and they have emotion, and it lives on forever. And the score is going to live on forever, and it's going to be on vinyl. The whole thing will be available October 6th, 2025, everywhere in the world. And leading up, we're going to have some more little treats along the way. But
Got a
Michael,
couple more
thanks
singles
for what was that?
got a couple more singles
Yeah, a couple more
coming.
singles coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there anything you would say like this is a great conversation? I think that younger composers or people who are talented musicians who want to get involved in something like this, what's just like one word of advice? I know that there's 1,000 things that you could say, but what's
Mhm.
one thing that a little takeaway that if somebody's wanting to do something like this, which is score a film, what would you say? What was some steps?
I'd say first and foremost is just create and, find whether it's, reaching out to someone in film school or reaching out to a company or some like just find some way to create and find some way to collaborate with other artists because I think that's at the end of the day like as composers we are still filmmakers and we're telling the story through music, the medium music, but it's all, going back to, the film as a whole and being able to understand that collaboration, understand that language. And that's something that you don't necessarily learn in music school. And it's something you just learn from experience and you learn from doing it over. And, each director, each filmmaker has a different language as well and a different way that they process things and a different way they communicate. And so it's so much of this um this journey is just like building that rapport, and I think that's kind of alluded to earlier. It's just something that over time you develop your own shorthand and you um becomes this idea, hopefully this like sort of seamless process where it's takes a lot of trust and a lot of vulnerability, and it just it comes from just doing it over and over again.
Yeah, for sure. It's just do it. And it's find people that you want to collaborate with because that's the tree of trust. And that's when you can let your guard down and let that subconscious take hold. And, I'm excited for me and you for the next, I'm sure you're practicing underwater sounds and
Yeah,
how to play the
got some
violin
ideas
underwater.
coming
But there's, what's wild is there's some other things that are popping up that I'm really excited about that I can tell you about later on that may be before that. So it's exciting. And I'm so proud of you and congratulations on the first single, Ascension, that you have created, which is out in the world today. And more will be trickling and holding hands with it as we walk into October 6th. And everyone
Yeah,
gets to
thanks,
see it
Rob.
and own it and listen to it and watch it.
And I'm excited for the LA screening December
Yes.
5th. So I'm
Yes. I cannot wait. That's like
excited to be out
it's a
there.
dream. It's like we're getting to play in places, you know, like the John F. Kennedy Center. We're going to be
Oh,
playing
wow.
at the John F. Kennedy Center. We're playing in these places that I've heard about growing up, and I'm really excited because a lot of these theaters are very excited. The Texas Theater is so excited. These people in Memphis at the Malco are so excited, and the street team is so excited. And I know that this song today is really gonna get everybody's wheels turning, because if you think about it, no one's seen the movie yet.
Yeah.
Just a few of us. And so it's like a kid going off to college. You're like, all right. And they go off to college, and that's what our movie's gonna be doing. So
Yeah. And I like teased just that one shot, and you're like,
yeah.
now you have to think like, what is this going to be? So
Yeah, a lot of people have commented. It's like, "Oh my goodness, this shot! This is an amazing shot." And I'm like, "Oh, just wait. Hutch Crane did it. Such a
yeah,
phenomenal job." And I was, like I said, I watched it last weekend, and what's bizarre to me is I get more excited each time I watch it. You know, a lot of my stuff, it's hard to go back and watch things. For some reason, this film, I feel like I'm finding out new stuff every single day, and I've lived with it for 2 years. But yeah, well, Michael, thank you for waking up early
yeah.
with us today, and congratulations. I'm excited to see what everybody says today.
Thanks, Josh. You too. I can't wait to share it with the world. We're there.
ETPC.
Yeah.
All right. I'll see you later. Bye.
Thanks.